My name is Peter Quince. I was actually born Peter Horowitz, which was not my family's name either. It was a name given by immigration. So our family name is Gidejetsky. We're Ukrainian Jews, and I grew up in the suburbs of New York with a very fervent, fertile, both political and artistic background, and poor. Poor, but very idealistic. And my mother, for example, was a very early feminist. She was into, she was a subscriber to starting at the first issue of Ms. Magazine, to give you an idea. So I was brought up really as a free thinker in many ways, but also Jewish. And then I came to the West Coast in 1975, and I love it here. I've been in Oregon since 1995. I've been in this park for 5 years. Before that, I was in a different park for about 10. And I like the fact that I'm able to own my own home here, which is difficult otherwise. It's always nice to be able to own your own home, not be a renter. I work for an online education company, a very innovative and unique online education for mostly for professions like tradesmen, carpenters, and so on. So I work on the classes, and in that sense, I'm kind of an educator or a writer, however you prefer to look at it. I love what I do. I love my job. But it doesn't pay a whole lot, and so being able to be here in the park and be in this beautiful town and own my own home, even at the relatively low income that I make, it gives me a peace of mind that I really treasure. Gosh, no, I'm I'm very much not left wing. I'm actually more of a traditionalist. I studied history. I majored in history. I love American history, and I try to hold to the values that our country's had for decades that I feel are not always being fully recognized and honored. In many ways, I think of myself as a conservative, not maybe as the media describes it, but in terms of honoring tradition and institutions, the value of those institutions and what they've been able to bring to us as a nation. When I talk about the people and being able to rise up, I'm talking about through institutions, not through violence or some kind of agitation, but it's when the institutions fail that violence happens. So that we need our institutions, and we can't have them destroyed by corporations or by people. So yeah, I see myself as, in a weird way, as a kind of a traditionalist or even a conservative, and wanting to just have the values that we've been able to nurture and cherish for centuries here in this country, have them continue to thrive and grow. It's one of the real worst things in America to have the amount of corporate money that is in politics. Uh, it's a stain on our country, and it's almost insurmountable in some ways. It's so insidious and powerful that most people almost don't realize how powerful it is, and how it warps our politics in so many ways. I think that I've been fortunate in my life to be able to participate in a couple of political campaigns, and so I went out and I met people in the course of those campaigns, just canvassing door to door, and I found that Americans, as a rule, are really good, decent, uh, more well informed than you might guess, and yet our politics are so ruled not by the people, but by corporate interests, moneyed interests, and what they're able to accomplish frankly, behind closed doors. So it's a real problem. Politicians, I don't know if they're bought by corporations, but I think that there's a natural perverse incentive for politicians to seek the kind of support they can get from corporations to avoid the kind of support that they could give to an opposing politician if they stood up against the corporations. And I think there's maybe a natural affinity. In many cases, the people in politics have come out of corporations. They have friends in corporations. I mean, it's the good old boys network in so many ways that um, obviously there are some politicians who are not like that, who are there for public service. Um, but unfortunately, the they're not always valued or recognized in the degree that I think they should be. I wouldn't say that money in politics is exactly the same as bribery, but I definitely wouldn't say it's speech. That is an abomination because one person can say one word at a time, but one corporation can just flood the marketplace. Um, and so it's not, you know, it's not, it would be like saying that a boxer can go into the ring and face a tank, and what's a fair fight? No, it's not. The it's sophistry to call it speech, and I think that it was. You're referring to the Supreme Court decision, obviously, that found that money in politics was speech. I think that was sophistry. I think that was just an attempt to find an argument to further what they wanted to do anyway, and it's absurd nonsense. Foreign countries? Absolutely not. No, the again, the perverse incentive of money in politics is bad enough when it comes from corporations within our own shores. And of course, some of those corporations are multinational. They're in essence almost like foreign countries, but at least they're not foreign countries. And yes, they should be absolutely, that's ridiculous to think that foreign countries should not be involved in our politics. And frankly, we should have public funding of campaigns to avoid all of this. There shouldn't be the bar to the public square being based on how much money you can raise is as I said, it's just the most profound corruption of our democratic system, and I think we're all paying the price of that right now. Global warming, more than anything else. Um, it maybe a better term for it is climate change, but it is the abiding and it's the one issue that so dwarfs every other issue. If our planet dies, what does anything else matter? Um, and obviously there are other aspects, just access to the vote and so on, and the staining of our politics because of corporate ownership of media mouthpieces that spew lies. But the biggest issue biggest issue for the last 30 years has been global climate change, and yet we have done so little. At least it's finally becoming one of the top issues that people are discussing. It used to be not even in the top 10. So at least it's getting there, but the corporate money is doing everything it can to not have it be there. And that's going to kill our entire planet. The folly of it, the short-sighted folly of it is breathtaking. I think that it as a general rule, it's hard to say. States should be able to set their own campaign laws to some extent, um, but only to make them more restrictive and more open than federal laws. I wouldn't say that they could do, because there's this nullification idea that states can nullify federal laws. Um, Typically, the way our system works, federal laws take precedence unless the state laws are more restrictive. And depending on what you're talking about, but in terms of like regulation, that's typically the way it is. So yes, I think the states should be able to restrict, have their own campaign finance laws, especially if the laws are for the betterment of the people of that state. I think that it torpedoes the marketplace of ideas and makes it very hard to have any kind of a sincere engagement in that marketplace, because because as I said, the corporate money can drown out individual voices and make individual voices feel irrelevant, so that they don't even try to participate. But as I also said earlier, my own experience of talking to people, just everyday people, the average person on the street, I'd so much rather hear their voice than the voice of any corporate boardroom in America. I think that there's more wisdom and there's more compassion, and I think there's frankly just better ideas for our country in the average trailer park than there is in in the corporate boardroom. Yes, I do think we can have a real democracy despite the politicians being beholden to massive donors. But I think it takes more work. I think it's harder. It puts a greater burden on the rest of us. Um, but we have it in us. It's not. This is not out of our control. I think the worst of what the corporate money in politics does is it makes people feel irrelevant, and we're not.